The comp plan it's interesting. We want to be transparent. We want to do things out in the public. At the same time, we had this thick document that the Planning Commission, who it was their draft that started with the Planning Commission, and the planning staff worked out, and we needed to go through it and understand it. You can read something, but you have to be able to ask questions. And I think some of what happened and why people have, again, been not real big fans of the county council is that we have it's a work session. It's not, the public is allowed to listen. At the beginning of the process, we needed to be able to focus with our planning department and ask questions to understand. Just because a council member asks a question doesn't mean they're in favor of that thing. We just have a question. Well, I think we have to understand what the comp plan is and what it is not. It's a guidance document. All of the zoning comes after, the density comes after, maps and things come after. Now, I'm hoping now that some of the things that are supposed to come after, for example, village maps, I personally think that we need to incorporate them right here and now, and we need to draw those lines and have the public hearing and figure out what those village boundaries are going to be. I think that we certainly can do that now, and I think that that would help alleviate some of the anxiety. Affordable housing. 2 years ago, we put together a group, and we were talking about workforce housing. Two completely separate animals. Workforce housing, the way the previous council defined it, was our teachers, our emergency service workers, our firefighters, people who have careers here. Maybe not the highest paying careers, but they have careers. It is not what people think of affordable housing. They automatically go to low income housing, subsidized housing. That's not what I thought the workforce housing section was supposed to be about. The chapter is called Affordable Workforce Housing, which then already starts confusing the issue. And 2 years ago, we put together this workforce housing group, and they came back with a list of suggestions for us. And to me, for the comp plan use, what we should have done was taken some general concepts and written a couple paragraphs. It's not what happened. The entire document got dropped into the comp plan for us to vote yay or nay on each of these bullet points. And again, to me, you can argue whether you agree with A, B, and C, but the bigger question is, does it even belong in the comp plan? So I'm hoping that we can clean that up and just take that back to just some language about it rather than specific bullet points and suggestions from an outside group that is not the county council. Of course, the other section, and you started to allude to, is on the western villages. That's the other hot topic, and extending the sewer lines, which everybody can agree it's very expensive, but it is a great way to clean up the bay because most of those septic systems, if they're not failing, they're halfway underwater. And anytime you can replace even the BAT septic systems with a sewer line. But in the vision statement of the comprehensive plan is to preserve and protect the rural character of Talbot County. So if you build a sewer line, do you want to add hundreds of homes to a village? I think probably not. So that's where we get into all of the conversation about density and zoning, and we need to get that right. And right now, the current density is 4 dwelling units per acre. So if that doesn't get changed, then there are some, there's not a lot of large parcels throughout the county, but there's few where it could change the character of that area. And so we either bring in those village boundaries to maybe partially solve that potential problem, or change the density or combination of the two.
You think that's where it's going to go?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, because you had mentioned infill, and I'm looking for some numbers. What we do know right now is that there are 300 on the western part, 370 undeveloped parcels. They could be a quarter acre, they could be 100 acres, but there are 370. So even if you everybody had just one, I mean, that's still quite a bit of growth for that particular area. So if you were then to start multiplying that by how many acres times 4, it would be thousands, and that's too much. I honestly think the market's going to take care of itself, that we should let the market determine that. We don't need to be giving bonus density.
If you had a magic wand and you could just say, okay, we can change this, this, and this, and then I'm ready to vote yes.
Backing up some of the language on affordable workforce housing again and making that more general, taking out some of the specifics, and that we can attack those ideas as they come along legislatively, and that we need to fix those village boundaries, and we need to have some, we also need to have some language in there that talks about density, even if it's not deciding specifically what it's going to be, that I think the council needs to look at each village and figure out how many parcels there are, how many acres there are, and get an idea of what's appropriate, what's going to be, allow for some development that's not going to conflict with the rural character of Talbot County. So I think sending it back to the Planning Commission, I mean, there are some people right now, changing the subject a little bit, that are talking about the fact that the county council doesn't have the authority to adopt a comp plan. Yeah. That is our job. I mean, it is very clear, the law is very clear about that, charter counties. And so that we need to keep our eye on the ball here, that this is our job, and we work with the Planning Commission and listen to their recommendations. After we do the introduction of the plan, there are public hearings. And so some people might think that's enough. Because this has been so controversial, because there has been so many work sessions, and I believe the comp plan has turned from an update to somewhat of a rewrite, which I don't agree with. I think since it has metamorphosized from an update to a partial rewrite, that we needed to back up and listen to the public, take their input during the process before we introduce the final draft. Because yes, some things will get changed in a public hearing, but I'm hearing the people say, we don't think you're going to change anything. We think that once you do a final draft, you're not going to change anything. And I think that we need to respect that and let them have their say. You know, there was a focus group, which was an okay session, but we needed that following week that, you know, we had 100, 150 people show up for, and have 35 or 40 people speak, and all of the letters and all of the emails. I think it's important, and if we have to take a few extra months or 6 extra months to get it right, rather than rushing through, then I think that's what we need to do.
How would you summarize the financial picture so far for the county?
Can I just say it's a crapshoot? Talbot County is really interesting when it comes to income tax. The makeup of our county happens to have a lot of retirees, and they're not your typical 9-to-5 workers who are getting W-2s. And we don't know, and the comptroller's office isn't really able to deduce. I actually just met with our finance director this morning trying to get a handle on this. How much of our income tax revenues are coming from people who have just a regular, you know, job, career, that are working class people my age, versus those who are retired who are living off of investment income. And we've had real estate bubbles that burst back in 2008. They had a tech bubble that burst before, and now what we've got is a stock market bubble that has burst. It was kind of hit an all-time high, and I've been, you know, everybody, if I had a crystal ball on the stock market, you know, we wouldn't have these issues. So here's the history of what's happened with income tax. In 2008, the last really good year, our income tax revenues were $31 million. The following year, they dropped to 19. We dropped $12 million in 1 year. That was not our W-2 job earners. Those are our retirees and their investment. So what happened? They either A, moved away 6 months and a day because they didn't like the taxes in the state of Maryland, and we lost a lot of millionaire earners. They may have passed away. And the stock market wasn't doing well then either. So if they either weren't selling, which means there's no revenue to pay taxes on, no income to pay taxes on, or they're selling at a loss. Well, so we got our November income tax numbers, and we were $3.5 million in the hole. And we figured, okay, well, not all of the returns got processed, and so our January numbers, and I was kind of waiting on doing this interview until we got the January numbers, was about an extra 1.1. Okay, so now we're to $2.5 million in the hole. Problem is, last budget cycle, we spent $500,000 more than we were taking in. Our revenues were expected to be 78, and we spent about $500,000 more than that. And I was the only one who voted against the budget last year, because my philosophy is you do not spend more than you take in, period. It was $400,000 more, and I mean, the budget requests, I want to say, were $7 or $8 million more than what we expected our revenue. So the council did do a lot of cutting, but in my opinion, not enough. I think that we needed to you have to look at what your revenues are. You need to say, I'm going to save something, not going to spend every penny. So I would like to spend less than what we take in, but certainly no more than zero. And it was, like I said, it was $400,000 more than revenues, and now here we are, $2-3 million in the hole. So we're pretty much tax revenue right about where we were 8 years ago. Well, here's the squeeze. Our expenditures in 2008 were $67 million. Our expenditures for this budget are $77 million. So your tax revenues are pretty close, within $1 million or $2 million, and yet you're spending $10 million more. So now everybody's going to go, why is the county council spending $10 million more money? So where is it? That's what I asked him. I said, okay, our half of it is education, right? So there were some increases that the county gave back in that 2008 time, back before the maintenance of effort law, and we talked about maintenance of effort last year, and people can go back and watch the old tape if they want to hear us talk about maintenance of effort. We won't do that today, but now whatever you give 1 year, you may never go below that. There's no release valve. So we had gone up, and then
payback.
It doesn't go down. So even if your revenues drop and the education is up here, doesn't matter what happens to your revenues, you can never go backwards. $2 million of it is public safety. And I don't think too many people are going to argue with council's decision to give those departments. Public safety consists of our 911 department, our emergency services, our sheriff's office, and detention center, that they were working with less than what was necessary. It's going to be tough to go up even higher. So there's 7 of your 10. This is one that gets to me, but we're stuck with this one too, is employee benefits. Our government employee benefits, and a lot of that is health. And I think part of that may be what you would call Obamacare Affordable Health Care Act. It's not affordable, but that's gone up $1.5 million. Some of that is, retirement. Employee benefits is everything, health, retirement, all of those things. But that's a big chunk. And then, the rest of it, general government in 8 years has only gone up $500,000. That's not bad. Yeah. That's not bad. And about $500,000 is health department. See, if you could do it across the board, but you can't.
Well, especially with education.
You can't cut education.
You can't touch benefits.
You can't really do much with that unless you were to literally change the whole structure and say that you're going to, then you're taking money out of, and we have single workers in Talbot County. I mean, I think everybody, government workers, private industry, we'd all love to have a raise. And there's this idea that you should give a certain percentage or a step every single year, whether it's the teachers or whether it's government employees. But I feel like this year we're going to have more than a hard time doing that. I think we need to keep talking to Annapolis about the maintenance of effort law. I understand. I understand the Board of Education is going to ask for more money every year. This year, I believe their request is going to probably be about $2 million more. We're $2 or $3 million in the hole. I don't know how we do that. So what ends up happening is you end up having to cut the other half of county government. So instead of everybody, say, taking a 2% cut, well, now you got to take a 5% cut to one half because you're not allowed to touch the other half.
What else?
I'm a conservative. I mean, what can you do? I believe in smaller government. I think we need to keep looking and figuring out where we don't need to grow.
Kind of.
Well,